That old farm where I was raised is mighty poor. Well, that old ground was so poor we'd have to put fertilizer out just to make dust. And one thing we couldn't grow was hot peppers. Now, we had tried for years to grow hot peppers, but all we ever got was these old mild-tasting peppers. It wouldn't even flavor a pot of beans. So one spring, we decided we'd go see the old granny lady that lived over in Bat Cave, see if she could tell us how to grow hot peppers. So one morning early we got up, jumped out of the bed, went out across mountains while we went up a hill, down a hill, uphill, down hill, uphill, down hill, uphill, down hill, up to a laurel thicket across the creek, till finally there we were, face to face with that big dark opening of Bat Cave. Now it wasn't just the cold air coming out of that cave that was causing us to shiver. See, we were afraid of the granny lady, but we got up our courage and we called out for her, "Granny lady!" Nobody came out. So we called a little louder, "Granny lady!" Nobody came out. We figured she wasn't home, so we called real loud, "Granny lady!" All at once out of that old hole in the ground jumped the ugliest old woman you've ever seen in your life. Why, she's as ugly as green slime. She's as ugly as a mangy dog. She was as ugly as a hairless guinea pig. Well, maybe she wasn't that bad. And in a minute or two, we could tell she wasn't as mean as she looked. So we told her what our problem was, how we couldn't grow hot peppers. And the old granny lady said, "Well, is your pa a mild-mannered man?" And we said, "Well, sure he is." The old granny lady said, "Well, see, that's your problem. A mild man can only grow a mild pepper. Why, it takes a mean, ornery, contrary old cuss to grow a hot pepper. So what you got to do before you plant those peppers tomorrow is you got to get your pa mad. Then see if he's mad when he plants those peppers. Phew, they'll be hot." Well, we thanked her, and back down out of that laurel thicket we came. Why, we came downhill, uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill, uphill, till way late that night we finally got home. Now, Pa was already in bed asleep, so we set about that old cabin and making plans as how we'd get him mad the next day before we planted those peppers. Well, long about daylight, Pa jumped out of the bed and yelled, "Get up, young'uns, it's time to plant peppers." Well, we just laid there and acted like we didn't hear him. He knew we were playing possum, but being the nice fellow he was, he let us sleep while he tried to put his pants on. Oh, but he was having an awful time, because, don't you know, we had tied the legs of his pants in a knot. Well, he sat down on the bed and got them straightened out real nice and tried to put his shoes on, but when he got his shoes laced up real tight, don't you know, he couldn't stand up because we had nailed his shoes to the floor. Boy, he is mad now, and when he said, "Come on, let's go," we knew we'd better. So downstairs we came just in time to see Pa making himself the last cup of coffee in the house. Now, he put his 2 usual scoops of sugar in it. He used big scoops. Whoosh, whoosh. Then he sat back and took a little sip. Oh, his eyes rolled back in his head. His head jumped up about that high. His tongue run out and flapped in the wind, snapped back and hit him in the back of the neck. Because, don't you know, we had put salt in the sugar bowl. Boy, he is mad now, and out the door he went, just in time for that bucket of water we had up there over the door to come right down over his head. Whoosh! We could tell he was mad now because the water just steamed off his hair. Psh! Well, I'll tell you, we went outside. We planted peppers as hard and fast as we could go, and we stayed out of Paul's way for sure. And the old granny lady was right, because that year we had the hottest peppers anybody had ever seen. Why, the neighbors had come from miles away just to watch those peppers glowing in the dark. And when it would rain, the water would just boil off those peppers and run down the rows. By the middle of the summer, that pepper patch had burnt the forest back about 100 yards in all directions. And when it come time to pick peppers, why, it's still too hot to get near. Finally, Pa had to wrap himself up in a wet blanket, put on goggles, and go down there and pick those peppers with the fire tongs. Now, that's just how hot they were. And he still got a pretty bad sunburn of doing it. Think about it.